Namaste and Siddhi Pranam. Welcome to your today's topic, which is understanding the menstrual cycle and ovulation. So we have entered into a third module on fertility, and fertility is a very, very important aspect of being pregnant and being able to conceive. And managing of fertility has various aspects to it, especially physical and emotional. So this is the physical aspect of menstrual cycle and ovulation cycle that we're going to discuss, and its crucial role in conceiving is there. So, growing a life within is really epitome of divinity, and motherhood offers a woman a unique experience of witnessing this growth of new life. And beyond our intellectual understanding, it is actually a very profound and transformative journey in really all dimensions, whether it's biological, emotional, or even spiritual dimension. So motherhood, and it's really been celebrated that way across all traditions and civilization, and that's why the processes that are related to carrying the child, and that way menstruation cycle plays a very, very crucial role here in a lot of ancient culture, or even still today the tribal culture. They really honor menstruation cycle as a sign of the women being fertile, as a sign of the land being fertile. So rather than, especially in some countries like in India, where I belong from, in a lot of communities, menstruation is seen as a taboo and we can't talk about it. But that's quite recent, since the demeaning of women has happened because of intercultural influences into Indian culture also. But otherwise, if you go to the ancient Indian cultures or the yogic times, we even have temples that are dedicated to the divine female energy. And in fact, some of the temples there is a temple called Kamakya in northeast India, where the statue is known or believed to menstruate every month. And everybody goes there and prays, and because that is considered as a sign of the creative expression of life. This is where the all life begins, and that is how it is considered. So while we describe pregnancy and menstruation cycle as a divine process, but biologically speaking, it's a very complex process, and and it has so many different aspects to it. So that way, understanding menstrual cycle and ovulation is a very crucial for women to plan to conceive, especially in the modern age where we can actually plan to conceive, and we have all the tools to manage to protect from unwanted pregnancy, and also when we wish to conceive, we can plan accordingly if we understand our cycles better. And if you, as a yoga teacher, understand how the system, the menstruation cycle, or the organ works, or the system works, you can really help your students to have a fertile health and be ready to be pregnant. So, to gain a better understanding of even pregnancy, it's really helpful to delve into the basic physiology of female reproductive system from the menstruation angle, because menstrual cycle is kind of the foundation of the female reproductive system. So now let's dive into understanding menstrual cycle. So a girl's journey into adulthood, or the ability to reproduce, begins with attaining puberty. And physically, puberty is marked as a maniac, which refers to the first occurrence of menstruation. So, although a girl's reproductive phase is considered to commence with menstruation, the process itself spans a 28-day cycle. So, typically, an average woman carries approximately 450 eggs in her ovaries, which is a reservoir. And every month or so, every 28 days, you can say, one egg of the ovum from this collection of eggs, of immature eggs, matures. So, and then it moves into the uterus. And inside the uterus, the ovum awaits the fertilization by the sperm. So, if fertilization does not occur, the ovum, along with the supportive environment of uterus, which is endometrium, is sheds from the body, which results in menstrual bleeding. So this process is known as menstruation, and this is where the first step begins in this journey. The next is the story of the 28-day cycle. So the menstruation cycle is a series of physiological changes that occur in a woman's body each month, preparing it for potential pregnancy. So on an average, the menstrual cycle lasts for 28 days and it's counted from the first day of menstruation. It begins after attaining puberty and, usually around in between the age of 10 to 16. And this process involves complex interplay of various hormones. So a typical menstrual cycle consists of 4 phases: a follicular or proliferative phase, which you can also say phase of maturation of ovum. And then next is ovulation phase, which is the release of egg phase. Third is the luteal or the secretory phase, which is the waiting for the fertilization phase. And D would be, menstruation, which is discharge of blood / egg or other material phase. And this is how the whole cycle of 28-day moves into these 4 phases. So when the egg is really mature and ripe enough, that's when the ovulation is there, and it waits if the sperm matches it and enters to it. If it doesn't happen, it releases itself, and that's what we call as menstruation. Now, coming on to the first phase, which is the follicular or the proliferative phase, which is the maturation of ovum phase. So this phase is characterized by development of follicles in the ovaries, which contain immature eggs. So the story begins in the brain, specifically the hypothalamus, which secretes the hormone called gonadotropin, also known as GnRH. And this hormone stimulates the nearby anterior pituitary gland in the brain to release the follicle-stimulating hormone FSH, and also the LH, which is luteinizing hormone. So these 2 hormones play a very crucial role in the process, and they signal the ovary to release the estrogen and progesterone. And with the release of what we mentioned, the hormones that I said just now, which is LH and FSH, so the ovary initiate the maturation of the oocyte. So oocyte, once that happens, once the follicles begins to mature here, and this phase lasts for a total of 14 days, and that's how it keeps growing and until the ovulation happens. So this phase, you can say, as I said, it lasts for 14 days, and the first day of menstruation counts as the day 1 of this phase. So this continues until the day of ovulation. So the first day of menstruation counts as a day 1 of the follicular phase, and the first day of ovulation counts as the end of the follicular phase. So the high level of estrogen prepares the uterus to receive the ovum or egg. So the inner lining of the uterus, which is known as endometrium, thickens by accumulating more cells and blood vessels. So in the cervix, the mucosa become watery and elastic, so which facilitates the movement of sperm inside the cervix. And during this phase, one of the follicles matures and becomes ready for ovulation. So let's enter into, so here in the diagram below, what you can see is the first step was the primary follicle, which we discussed in the previous follicular phase, which grows into growing follicular, then develops into developing follicular. Fourth stage is mature follicular, and fifth stage is ruptured follicle. So one of the follicle ruptures and releases the egg, and that's what we call as ovulation. So to explain you again, ovulation is a process in which follicle ruptures and release the mature egg, matured oocyte or egg. The mature egg then moves through the fallopian tube and reaches the uterus, as you can see in the diagram above. And this is the phase where egg or ovum is fully prepared and awaits for the sperm to enter and wait for the fertilization. And ovulation typically occurs in the middle of the menstruation cycle, and that is around the 14th day. And during this phase, the level of hormones such as like LH and FSH are very high. The mucus in the cervix becomes watery, creating a conducive environment for the sperm. And in short, I would say during ovulation, the female body produces the egg, which is most receptive to the male sperm for fertilization. So the presence of sperm during this phase increases the chances of pregnancy. Now, coming on to the third stage, which is the luteal or secretory phase. So this phase occurs after ovulation and after ovulation has ended, and typically this phase lasts from ovulation till the day 28 of the cycle. And during this phase, the ruptured follicles transformed into corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone hormone. And the purpose of this hormone is to maintain the favorable environment in the uterus for the potential implantation of the fertilized egg. And therefore, progesterone secretion is high during this phase. And additionally, the cervical mucus loses its elasticity and making it more difficult for the sperm to enter. So the body maintains hormone levels in anticipation of the implantation of a fertilized egg. So it's kind of like the body is assuming that during the ovulation phase, the sperm has already entered. Now it's time to close the doors and wait to maybe grow the egg. But since if there is no egg, my apologies, wait for the sperm to enter. And so the gates are closed. If the sperm entered during the ovulation phase, that's it. If it doesn't enter, then that results into menstruation. But the luteal phase is where that is kind of implantation phase, where body is assuming sperm might have entered. So we need to create an environment to grow the fetus. So then that environment retains for a while. So, if the fertilization does not occur during this phase, the corpus luteum regresses and the hormone levels, that is progesterone level, decreases. Hence, it loosens the implantation environment and enters into the next stage, which is menstruation. So, let's see. Coming on to the menstruation. So, menstruation occurs at the end of the luteal phase due to the negative feedback mechanisms. So, hormonal levels, that is progesterone, begins to decrease in the body because the decrease in progesterone levels triggers the shedding of inner lining of the uterus, resulting in the vaginal bleeding. So the inner lining is the endometrium. So the unfertilized egg is expelled from the body, marking the onset of menstruation. This phase typically lasts for 3 to 7 days and signifies the beginning of the new menstrual cycle. And during menstruation, normal blood loss can range up to 80 ml with an average of approximately 30 ml. So blood loss exceeding 80 ml is considered a little abnormal. So the average duration of menstruation is 3 to 5 days, and as the inner layers of the uterus shed, the body expels the egg, and abdominal pain also occur during this phase, commonly known as cramps. Now, let's discuss about the fertile window, where there are higher chances of conceiving. So as you can see in the figure, day 1 to 5 occurs during menstruation. Day 1 to 14 is considered the follicular phase. Day 14 or midday of the menstruation cycle is the ovulation phase. And from day 14 to 20 is the luteal phase. The 5 days from 9th to 14th day before ovulation is marked as the fertile window. So the average lifespan of a sperm is considered to be 5 days. On the other hand, the mature female egg has a lifespan of only 24 hours. So if the egg remains unfertilized, it starts to deteriorate the day after ovulation. So therefore, the fertile window is typically considered to be 5 days, leading up to and including the day of ovulation. So in other words, if a couple is trying to conceive, the best time to have intercourse to increase the chances of pregnancy is from day 9 to day 14 of the menstruation cycle. Now let's quickly look at the effects of yoga in regulating the menstruation cycle. So menstruation cycle involves like hormone fluctuations over those 28 days, and significant amount of emotional and physical changes are also seen in women during this phase. So practicing yoga can actually help regulate the endocrine system, thereby bringing a lot of hormonal balance in the female body. And certain yoga postures can really increase the blood circulation in the body, hence increasing the blood circulation to the reproductive organs also, and help to elevate any menstruational irregularities. Stress is also a very major factor that affects the hormonal balance, and high level of stress stimulates the release of stress hormones, which is cortisol, which can have a very negative impact on the body and disrupt the menstruation cycle. So when we introduce the yoga practice, especially in the phase when the women are trying to get pregnant, and help them reduce stress through the regular practice of yoga, pranayama, yoga nidra, this can really promote their emotional well-being. And we can also use specific visualization techniques or design yoga nidra that is aimed at conceiving. We can also design meditation practices that is aimed at conceiving, and also even if they practice very regular meditation or yoga nidra, that can also help them reduce stress, which anyway will help them maintain a healthy menstruation cycle. So, the endocrine system is responsible for hormonal regulation, as mentioned earlier. The menstrual cycle really begins with the release of hormones, and its entire duration is governed by the interplay of various hormones. So, yoga will really help in maintaining the entire cycle and regulating the endocrine system to ensure that when during the ovulation, when the mature egg arrives in the uterus and awaits the fertilization, the increased blood circulation in the pelvic region can provide a lot of nourishment to the ovum. So, yoga asanas can really help improve the circulation around the pelvic region, promoting the healthy ovulation process. So, with that, I hope this was helpful and contribute to your understanding. Thank you and namaste.